Hello, everyone. Happy Independence Day. Happy 60. My name is Teju Adeshida. I'm the Artistic Director of Fehinty African Theater Ensemble, and it's our pleasure to be a part of NIDEF's celebration, Independence celebration today in such a unique way. If we've learned anything during this time is that we need to use some ingenuity, and that with some creativity, some imagination and resourcefulness, we can overcome any challenge. That's a useful lesson. It's a useful lesson for a nation at 60, such as Nigeria, for us all as individuals. And I can tell you that it's certainly a lesson that as Fehinty Theater, we are learning to apply some creativity even differently from what we've always done. So by necessity, what you are going to view today from us, our gift offering to this program, is a performance presented via Zoom. It presents a scene from a play that we did almost 10 years ago that was in itself derived from the Facebook notes of Dikwa Adeshida. So even then, technology innovation was being applied. Facebook was a space where a writer in Nigeria, which is where Dikwa is based, could share his musings on Facebook in that space, and it sparked a performance, in the US. And that just exemplifies for me how Nigerians everywhere and anywhere could work together for progress, by using the tools and the resources that are available to us. And with that, I want to really ask your support for Fehinty Theater as we navigate this new landscape, to stay open, to stay relevant, to continue to tell our stories. We like to say that we are your theater company. I'd also like to share with you that the Facebook notes that turned into a play is now also been turned into a published book titled My French Teacher Had an Evil Accent, a collection of memories, memoirs, and mischiefs by Dikwa Adeshida. And here's the book, actually. It's available on Amazon, so please check it out. What you're going to view in just a few seconds, few minutes, is actually a story, one of the stories from the collection that was originally on Facebook notes, titled "The Pen Was Mightier Than the Rod." So I invite you to sit back wherever you are, enjoy the scene, and it's a new exploration for us to do work this way. And happy Independence Day again.
Oladipupo.
For a child who was simply called Dipo, I knew I had blown my mother's fuse again. I could always tell my mother's disposition towards me by the way she called me. For instance, if she called me Dipo, it meant she was calling me to ask me about something or send me somewhere. If she called me Ladi, I knew she had probably heard that I was nice to a neighbor, relative, or church member. I was hardly ever nice to my siblings. And if she called me Oladi Plenty, one half of the name in Yoruba and the other in English, I knew she was about to offer me a surprise, a good one. But today, she was calling me my full name, and for your information, The full version didn't even feature on my birth certificate. She called again.
Oladipupo.
This time, her pitch slightly raised. Ma, I replied from the backyard.
Ṣó gbọ́ mi tẹ́lẹ̀ ni?
She asked if I hadn't heard her before in Yoruba. I still answer from a distance. Rara, meaning no in Yoruba.
Come here, my friend.
I was tempted to say, Mom, I can't come right now. But I knew that would be over my dead body. Of course I had heard her the first time she called. But my preoccupation with this mango tree was a bit more fascinating than whatever my mother had to say. My thinking was that if she called me a couple of times and I didn't respond, she would forget or perhaps ask me later. I heard my mother's perfect English accent from beneath. She called me again.
Dipo, I am waiting for you.
How silly I was. I had been on that mango tree for perhaps half the day, weeding through the branches until I could satisfy myself with the yellow ones. Below me and around my mother's feet was a sea of mangoes and pills. I had been eating them all day. My mother was exasperated, but it didn't show. I hear all British trained English teachers behave the way she did. But today, that didn't matter. All I had on my mind was to make it down this tree without getting the beating of my life.
I am waiting.
I came down. I must have been a sight. By this time, there must have been nothing less than 15 full mangoes within my bowels. Without their seeds, of course. I could feel the sticky substance around my mouth. Just, I was in Form 1, and I could tell that looking at me from any angle, I looked really stupid.
Is this where you have been all day?
Yes, I replied.
Have you done your homework?
No, I replied.
Have you washed the plates?
Rara, I replied in the negative in Yoruba, hoping to soften the consequences. Finally, she asked,
So, what have you been doing all day?
My mother speaking English to her 10-year-old son meant something was going to happen. I could almost predict with precision. Mom was going to cut a stem from the mango tree in an attempt to beat me with it. I would take to my heels. She would tell me not to run, or else she would report me to my father, whose words I feared more than his belt. I would then return and get lashed, shed some crocodile tears, so the neighbors wouldn't know, or so they would know, what devil my mother was, and be released from the rest of the afternoon to keep faffing. My mother's next words woke me up from my tour du bulala. She said my stubbornness had run its course, and she was getting the impression that beating me wasn't working anymore, so she would change her tactics. What was worse than beating, I thought?
Since you can't seem to sit still, I will give you something to do.
My mind raced quickly through all the possibilities. Pick pin? Angle 90? Hanging? Picking up papers, duh! Oh, digging my height, double duh! Finally, I figured what it might be. It had to be siesta! That was the only thing I knew could kill a youngster like me, asking me to sleep during the afternoon. Again, my mother's words brought me back to reality.
Dipo, you will write me a story.
About what? I asked, at least relieved I wasn't going to be beaten or sleeping.
You decide. Write me a story about anything you like.
With that, she turned and walked away, saying in her wake,
Make sure it's 500 words and submit it to me by this time tomorrow.
It was 3 p.m. I had a whole day to write. 500 words wasn't that much. After all, I had once written, I will never make fun of Hawa and Bolanli again 500 times as punishment for picking on 2 girls in my class. With mother gone, I climbed back into that tree. I spotted this fruit I had been targeting all afternoon, plucked it, bit it, but couldn't taste anything. It tasted like wood or chaff or pulp. Lord have mercy! What did my mother do to the fruits? I got down, stood at the base of the tree, staring at the pills in search of inspiration. Nothing came. I thought of pulling a prank on my mother by writing, "I will never eat mango in the afternoon again," until the words reached 500. But I knew better than to dare my mom. I stared harder. Ugh. Was I meant to write a story about a mango that tasted like pulp? Yeah, boring. I walked around the house a few times. I even stumbled into my mother, who pretended that she never said anything to me, nor was expecting anything from me in 24 hours. I scampered. After doing my rounds, I eventually settled somewhere in the garage, facing my mother's 504 station wagon. Its off-white color wasn't exactly inspiring. Still no idea. Then suddenly, in a rush, I got an idea. Ding! I will write a story of how I, a 10-year-old boy, drove his mother's 504 around town, got chased by the police, and ended up in a cell. Initially, I thought prison, but I thought that would have been too gross. I sought paper. I wrote. I erased. I wrote. Piece paper. Wrote again. And wrote and wrote and erased. Squeezed paper. And I wrote. My exact plan was to finish the story that evening, so I wouldn't have to be plagued by another afternoon of being called to order. But for some reason, I started writing. The story kept developing. By evening, I had fully developed characters. I had even added a missing feature to my mother's car, a sound system that would make the car shake. Because I was 10, and I also had to reduce the size of the car, so I wouldn't have to use a pillow, which I thought would make the girls, laugh at me. That night, I dreamt about my story. And by morning, I was ready to write. Since we were on holidays, right after the early morning devotions, I got one of my exercise books, folded the concluding pages to form a demarcation, and started my story. By 10 a.m., I was done. Only then did I realize that I hadn't had breakfast or a bath. But I was okay with that. I placed the scripted portion of the notebook on my mother's side of the dining table. Mom had gone to give an early morning lecture, and when she returned around noon, I was too excited to eat mango. I wanted to know her immediate reaction. I welcomed her from her famed 504 wagon, took her bag in, and waited till she could settle down to read my piece. She opened the book, first flipping through the original content of half-copied notes and failed assignments. But I rushed her to my essay. Come on. She opened the book first, and then she realized I had exceeded 500 words by 1,000 words. I had a real piece. My bespectacled mother started reading the story, and before long, she took her glasses off and got really engrossed. When she finished, she asked,
Who wrote this?
Amy. I answered in Yoruba, hoping not to incur any negative points.
Oladi Plenty.
I knew I was in my mother's good books. I never went back to that mango tree.